50 months. This man Diddy got 50 months. Are you surprised? Well, I'm not that surprised. I know inside Diddy's sick sadistic head, he's like, take that, take that, take that, head ass. Now, before I go deep into this video, random thought, I just want to say, I do not feel sorry for the victims whatsoever. I'll explain my perspective on that shortly, right? Now, if Diddy wasn't a famous musician, and if he was just a regular fool in the hood, I could see him being that, you know, that creepy uncle on the block with the 40 ounce and the Bluetooth headset walking around with a 40 ounce. About, nephew, I got connections to Def Jam. Young fella, when I hop in the back of my white van, yeah, he'll be that guy. Come on now. Everybody know it's always that one old head in the hood who act like he got connections to everything. He got connections to everything. And he walking around and he talk about it proudly, loud and proudly. But everybody knows he ain't got connections to nothing. He just living in a fantasy world in his head. Yeah, Diddy would be that dude if he was not rich. Like, no, my boy. We know you ain't on the crumb, my G. That's how we look at the, you know, quote unquote, the uncle on the block. He just be living in a whole fantasy world. Now, what's wild to me is that just a week ago, I dropped a video encouraging people on why investing is more important than throwing money in a savings account. And some goofy comments came in my section saying, yeah, but to some of us, money ain't everything. You're ruining it. Man, silly rabbit tricks out for kids. Silly rabbit tricks out for kids. I see why that's a quote now. Yeah, when I used to hear my mama say that, I see why. That statement go a long way. People who say money ain't everything are usually borderline broke. Not all the way homeless. Not all the way homeless on the streets, you know, walking around with the cup, but borderline homeless. But one mistake, one mistake away from actually being homeless. Those are the guys that be saying this, right? You can't be out here with think about it. You can't be out here with a cup asking for change and then you quoting money ain't everything. What that is for those people who are borderline broke, who say money ain't everything, that's pretty much a coping mechanism. It's a coping mechanism. And it's an excuse to not use your brain, hands, and feet to get to this money. Yeah. When people say money isn't everything, they lying. Look at this Diddy situation. Money changes environments. Money changes choices. And most importantly, money changes freedom. It won't solve your character flaws, but it will dramatically change your circumstances. Now, let's get into this video because I will talk y'all heads off. Master Quency has a lot to say. Yes, indeedy.
CBS News special report. I'm John Dickerson. Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs was just sentenced to more than 4 years in prison. The 55-year-old was convicted back in July on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Combs had pleaded not guilty to all charges and was acquitted of 2 more serious charges, sex trafficking and racketeering, which would have led to a potential life sentence. Moments before he was sentenced, Combs apologized for his disgusting, shameful, and sick behavior. Those are his characterizations. Our Jerika Duncan is outside the courthouse. Jerika has covered this case from the beginning. Jerika, your thoughts?
Now, imagine being able to be suspected of a crime, guilty of a crime, such as the crime that they just stated. And you could just go in the courtroom and just apologize, right? All you got to do is just apologize. And the 40 years you were supposed to receive wound up being 4 years. How, Sway? Ain't that what Kanye said? How, Sway? How does this happen? How does something like this happen? Right? You kind of gotta look at the situation that this black colonizer has put the victims in, right? Put them in a position to where it looks like that they were a part of the program. Like they were a part of, being used, being put in a position to where they are being used, but they can't even, how could I word it? They basically can't even prove that they was victims. That's how this Diddy case, from what I know, I haven't looked into all the details. I'm only giving y'all the little basic little things that I do know, right? Because I didn't want to look into a case like this with all this deviant behavior, and I just don't want to know all the details of that. But yeah, how could something that somebody would get 40 years for wind up getting 4 years? Transportation of what? This is crazy.
This was the most important day of this case, and Combs did give a statement about 12 minutes long where he spoke directly to the court. He talked about being personally responsible and apologized for what happened with his ex-girlfriends, Cassie Ventura and Jane. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and he said moments ago, I want to personally apologize to all of the victims of domestic violence. He said, quote, I hate myself right now. I was stripped to nothing. And when it comes to that video of him beating Cassie, he said, I was sick on drugs. I was out of control. I needed help. I make no excuses. I knew better. But the judge had some very sharp words in response to Combs. He acknowledged that he is trying to do better and told him that he hopes that he continues that, but instantly went into rejecting attempts to characterize what happened as, quote, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. He said you abused your power and control you had over women you claimed you had loved. You abused them emotionally and physically. He said the evidence was massive. I was sitting right here, he said. We read it and we saw it. Images of gashes and bruises and broken doors. And I saw it in the video. It was savage. This is according to the judge. This is some of the comments that he made just moments ago in court. Alice Gaynor from WCBS is in the courtroom right now and sending out notes just to give us a sense.
You got to think about how long was these people around Diddy and how long were they actually victims? Like, how long were you an actual victim and continued to witness demonic, deviant behavior? How long was you witnessing this? Years. And now you got to take a step back and you got to question that right there. Because when you are wind up being a victim, you have to do something about that immediately. And this is just education that I'm giving to, the younger generation, because that's who my message is for. My message is for the younger generation to improve, right? And anybody of an older age who's willing to listen to my message and, receive, the knowledge that I'm trying to, push out is for you too, right? But what I've came to realize is that people don't change. When you get a certain age, people don't change. So I'm not expecting, anybody in my age group Now, if you want to elevate and you're trying to get to the next level, yeah, you're gonna follow my message, or you may be in alignment. You might be like, yeah, I rock with dude, I agree with him, I like what he's talking about, and I'm rocking with it. But for the most part, my message is for the younger generation, so they don't have to go through this, right? Going through this, this is crazy.
What Combs' demeanor is like right now. What is his family reacting to? I also want to note something that the judge mentioned in reference to Jane. She went by the pseudonym Jane, but this was also an ex-girlfriend. He said he referred to the brutal assault of Jane by saying, "You kicked down 5 doors in her home, lifted her off the floor by her neck, punched her, kicked her, dragged her by her hair, slapped her so hard she fell down." Jane, quote, her credibility testified to those things, that she was a credible witness. So some sharp words again from the judge who just handed down that sentence, 50 months in prison. There will be time served, we believe, in consideration of that. So considering that, it might actually be 4 years. I'm just looking at a note, sentence is 50 months of incarceration. Agnifilo, which is the lead attorney for Combs, asking for more time to list facility recommendations. Also, supervised release, 5 years. No reaction from Combs. He is still sitting, and there's a $500,000 fine. You can see behind me a little bit the crowd that has been gathered here pretty much all day as the family had been in and out of that courtroom. When I asked a couple of the defense attorneys how they were feeling today, they didn't have a comment. This day was very serious. They knew that going in.
Notice how they said no reaction from Diddy, no reaction from his team. He really think that he should just go scot-free. He think that he's supposed to go scot-free. It ain't supposed to be no consequences. He just supposed to get off. Right? Regardless of what you say about him being a black colonizer and, destroying the minds of his own people, this goes to show you how the combination of money and power, when you have money and power, how it affects your brain. He really think that he's supposed to get off scot-free.
Long ago in July, when it was that split verdict, they said this was a win for Combs. But the second part of that, the most important part of that, is the sentencing happening today. Again, the judge sentencing him to 50 months behind bars.
Jerika, what other activity did we have today? Did we hear, there were the victim statements. Was this a part of the today's activities? And also, did the judge make any characterization of the final sentence relative to those harsh words that you quoted him as saying? In other words, did he match the two up? Did he say, "I'm delivering this very harsh characterological verdict on you," and the sentencing matches that, or did he just not make that connection?
No, he did acknowledge that the sentence that prosecutors were asking for, 11 years, was a bit of an overreach. The probation report recommended 60 months. So when you look at the probation report of 60 months, he comes up with 50 months. The prosecutors wanted 11 years behind bars. It's not quite in the middle, but it's a far cry from the 14 months that the defense was asking for. Some other things worth noting. Combs was found guilty on the 2 counts of the Mann Act. This is transportation of people across state lines for the purpose of prostitution, and that is illegal in this country. Prosecutor Christy Slavic at one point during this testimony said that this case was not just about prostitution, but violence. She emphasized the violence. And that is what we heard a little bit from the judge today when he recanted some of the testimony that we heard during the trial. Cassie Ventura, the star witness, the ex-girlfriend of Combs, who was with him for about 10 years, released a statement before this sentencing was handed down saying, "I am so scared that if he walks free, his first actions will be swift retribution towards me and others who spoke about him at this trial."
And you got to think about, like, the colonizers been doing the same thing for hundreds of years. They probably okay with this. They probably literally okay. Like the colonizer, like the people who have that colonial mindset. Yeah, they was doing the same thing for hundreds of years. So now in 2025, I don't think that's not a big crime to them. They like, hey, that's normal. That's something that you can do. That you can do as a billionaire music mogul who is, transporting pretty much his own people. It's a sick world we living in. Now, like I was saying, my goal is to motivate the youth. I want the next generation to not go through what we went through. I want the next generation to elevate without thinking that they got to work for some organization for 40 to 50 years. I want them to stay away from degeneracy, especially in the music industry. It all starts here. The industry, yeah, it looks like royalty, money, power, respect, you know, but you got to think about it. It comes at a price. It comes at a price. Your soul, your dignity, your moral compass. Is it worth it? Is it worth your shame, your embarrassment? Nowadays, you got to question every single rapper, every single music artist. You got to question them. Like, what side are they on? It's a crazy world that we living in because people used to look up to music artists, and it's still some today. Something is wrong with you if you're looking up to music artists like they are everything. You should be questioning every single person that does music and they are famous. They've signed a contract. I'm not talking about independent artists. It's a difference. I say focus on this moolah and invest in independence instead of signing with a label. Most rappers end up broke, in debt, and working for the same label they thought was going to save them. That's what you sweat. That's what you sweating, bleeding, hustling for, to get tossed aside when they done with you. That's what I'm saying. Like, you putting all this hard work, blood, sweat, and tears to get tossed aside when they done with you. Now, the downfall of Diddy ain't shocking. Every empire built on exploiting others eventually crumbles. Yeah, it eventually crumbles. Now, why does man need so much baby oil? That's what I want to know. Why did he need so much baby oil? Like, this was not personal usage. Imagine being the Amazon delivery driver pulling up with 15 boxes of baby oil and silk pajamas. Imagine being that guy doing that delivery on a weekly basis. Man kept Johnson and Johnson in business by himself. I know they thought they was going bankrupt. I know that they thought they was going out of business when Diddy got locked up. Now they like, oh yeah, he getting out. He's getting out. Our stocks are about to go up in 4 years. We're gonna be hurting for a couple of years. But we need Diddy to get back on buying this baby oil. Now, I do feel sympathy for the children, but I blame the parents wholeheartedly. To me, it makes no sense to hand your kids over to an industry that's known to chew people up and spit them out for the average music artist. There is no longevity in music. Being signed to a large record deal, there's no longevity in that. Most don't even make money like that. They make money just enough to keep up the image and stay active on social media. Imagine compromising your dignity thinking you're gonna be rich. But all you really got was the look of being rich. You have the presence of looking like you're rich. That's why they say looks can be deceiving. That's why I tell y'all reading is so important. Reading daily will grow your brain power by 10 to 20%. You don't just sign the dotted line without reading the contract. That contract is the real trap. The actual portal where freedom gets signed away. Yeah, that contract is a portal. Yeah, it's a portal, metaphorically speaking. Now, we knew Diddy wasn't a good dude. He had those making the band members walking across New York just to get him some cheesecake. How much are they worth now? How much did they really gain from that public embarrassment? I don't feel sorry for people willing to do anything for money. I don't feel sorry for these kind of people, and it's a lot of people like that. See, back in the 90s, maybe folks didn't know better. But nowadays, if you still run into the industry knowing what it is, that's a lack of integrity. Is your dignity really worth it? At the end of the day, money ain't the root of all evil. It just exposes the evil already planted in people. I got another video I want to share with y'all, but all of this is super nuts. Like, I don't even know what other way to explain all of this. But let's get into this other video.
Laura, that's right. So he spoke briefly to the judge, and I'm just going to look at my notes. He said that he was sobbing, and he said that he has lost respect for himself. He lost the respect of his family. He lost his businesses. And he said multiple times, I am begging for your mercy. He called his actions shameful and sick. He said he wants to be a father again. And he told the judge that if you give me this opportunity, I will never lay my hands on anybody else ever again. I will do right by my family, and I will do right by the community. This is not about making money. I want to be a functioning member of society. He talked about being sober for the first time in years. The judge also just saying moments ago, because the judge is speaking right now and addressing Combs, and
notice how he keep mentioning drugs. He keeps mentioning drugs. He keeps mentioning the fact that, you know, he was not in his right mind state, which two things could be true, but see what that does is it just effectively make you more 10 times more. Drugs, alcohol, I want to tell you that these things will slowly kill your brain cells over time. And you don't want to be caught in a position to where you are effectively strung out, taking drugs on a daily basis, drinking alcohol on a daily basis. You want your body as pure as possible because you'll be in the right mindset. So you notice how when she's speaking about the actual him actually pleading to the judge, he's saying he steady throwing in there. He's taking accountability, but he's also throwing in there that I was on drugs. Notice how he keeps throwing that in there. And now he's saying, like, I'm in my right mind and I want to be a member of society all over again. He also mentioned that it's not about money. I just want to be back with my family, doing the right thing, and I'm going to never lay my hands on people. He's actually saying the right thing. He got some good lawyers. If anything ever happened to me, where are Diddy lawyers? I need Diddy lawyers. Because this from going from having a potential 40-year sentence and only getting 4 years is some insane work. It's insane. Remember, discipline is freedom. Integrity lasts longer than any contract. And clout fades faster than cheesecake on a bad boy audition night. I gotta write that down. I'll be having some philosophical
Courtroom, and he said that I do take into account the fact that you have inspired many people. He talks about the fact that he says, I know that you are a self-made artist that have inspired and lifted up communities worldwide, and the impact in entrepreneurship that you've had is iconic. And he talks about the murder of Sean Combs's father. That's something that Combs, his legal team, brought up multiple times, that he had a very rough upbringing, and it all began when his father was murdered when he was very young, this rough upbringing, which later led to PTSD. But Combs just breaking down, crying also when 6 of his 7 children spoke today, Laura, in court. They cried, begging for their father to come home, the judge thanking them for their courage. And again, his 84-year-old mother also sitting in the courtroom today. She was there nearly every single day of his 2-month criminal trial over the summer. And Combs, we know that he had sent, Laura, that 3.5-page letter to the judge via his attorneys last night. And we weren't sure if he was going to end up speaking today, because as the day went on, he was not giving his allocution. But then it was the very last moment before the judge spoke. And again, the judge is explaining to him, look, you were being sentenced for the Mann Act. Those are the 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. You are not being sentenced when it comes to sex trafficking, when it comes to racketeering, which he was acquitted on. But, Laura, something that we've talked about, you and I, is that the judge can take into consideration Combs' history of violence. He can take into consideration the testimony of Jane, of Cassie Ventura, of Mia, right? Even though he was acquitted of sex trafficking and racketeering, the judge can take all of this into consideration when deciding a sentence. And remember, Combs faces up to 20 years in prison, 10 years mandatory maximum on each count. And the judge had kind of showed his cards perhaps earlier today, saying that he did agree with the probation department's guidelines of 5 to 7 years, Laura.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories.
So y'all got it. I hope you guys was able to learn some lessons from this. Stay away from drugs, stay away from alcohol, stay away from taking people against their will, stay away from all of this crazy stuff, stay away from the music industry, right? Focus on being independent, focus on getting your paper up. All you got to do is work, hustle, and invest.